It was a sweltering July afternoon in small-town Tennessee when Joe Carter, a grease-stained mechanic with hands tough as leather but a heart soft as bread, stepped out of his cluttered garage for a breath of air. The scent of burnt rubber clung to the sky, and the only sounds were cicadas buzzing and the occasional cough of a passing truck. That's when he saw her. Sitting alone on the warped wooden bench at the Greyhound stop, in a white wedding dress that looked too grand for such a dusty corner of the world, was a young woman with mascara-streaked cheeks and eyes that had clearly run out of tears. Joe wasn't one to meddle, but something about the way she clutched a small suitcase to her chest, like it was all she had left, pulled at him. Her veil, lopsided and wilted in the heat, barely covered the bruises of her heartbreak. He walked over slowly, unsure of what to say, wiping his hands on a rag. "You all right, miss?" he asked gently. She looked up, startled, then shook her head with a humorless laugh. "Do I look all right?" "No, ma'am," he said honestly, sitting beside her on the bench despite the grease on his overalls. "You look like someone who's had her heart drop kicked out of her chest." That cracked a smile through her trembling lips. "I was supposed to get married today," she whispered. He left. Said he couldn't do it. Just drove off. Left me standing at the altar." Joe didn't ask for details. Didn't need to. Pain like that was universal. "Got anywhere to go?" he asked after a pause. She shook her head again. "No family. No friends around here. I thought he was all I needed." Joe looked out at the road, then back at her. "Well, I ain't got much," he said. "But I got a couch, cold lemonade, and a dog that don't judge. You're welcome to rest up at my place till you figure out your next move." She blinked. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" He shrugged. "Because someone once did it for me." Her name was Emily. She followed him home, a little hesitant but too drained to protest. Joe's house was nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a sagging porch, and wallpaper that had seen better decades, but it was clean, warm, and smelled faintly of pine cleaner and engine oil. His dog, Max, immediately curled up at her feet. Over dinner, which was just boxed mac and cheese and some fried okra he had left over, they talked. Emily had been a teacher, loved books, and had always dreamed of a quiet life with a good man. Instead, she got lies, betrayal, and a one-way ticket to nowhere. Joe shared his own story too, how his mother died young, how he'd been passed around foster homes, how an old man named Earl had taken him in at 17, taught him everything about fixing cars and treating people right. "The world's already got enough people who turn their backs," Earl used to say. "Be someone who don't." Days turned into a week. Emily helped around the house, started baking again, even planted flowers in the rusted bed of an old truck Joe had abandoned in the yard. Locals started noticing how Joe, the quiet mechanic who'd always kept to himself, suddenly smiled more, laughed louder. But gossip has a way of spreading in small towns. Whispers flew about the bride Joe picked up off the curb. Some people snickered. Others warned him she'd just use him and leave. Joe ignored them. Emily had begun tutoring neighborhood kids after school, turning his garage's dusty back room into a makeshift classroom. Then came the day the old Baptist church caught fire. Emily had been inside, organizing books for a charity drive. By the time Joe heard the sirens and got there, the building was already ablaze. Without hesitation, he ran straight in. They found him carrying Emily out, coughing and burned, but alive. Later, in the hospital, when asked why he'd risked everything, he simply said, "You don't abandon people who've already been abandoned." The town changed after that. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was awe. But slowly, judgment turned into respect. Donations poured in to help rebuild the church. Local businesses offered Emily a job and Joe free supplies for his shop. One by one, the same people who doubted them came by with casseroles and apologies. A year later, the whole town gathered again. This time, not for a wedding gone wrong, but for one that felt entirely right. Joe and Emily, surrounded by the same people who once whispered behind their backs, exchanged vows under the open sky, barefoot on the grass, with Max wagging his tail as the best man. Joe kissed her hand and said, "I didn't save you that day. You saved me. Gave me a reason to look forward instead of back." Emily smiled through tears. "You taught me that being broken doesn't mean being unworthy of love." Their story made its way online after a local kid posted about it. "Mechanic Mary's bride left at bus stop," the headline read. It went viral. But to Joe and Emily, the real miracle wasn't the attention. It was how one act of kindness, offering a couch and a cold drink, changed two lives and reminded an entire community what it means to care without conditions. Because in the end, we don't always need to be heroes. Sometimes, we just need to show up, sit beside the broken, and say, "You're not alone."